Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Charmed. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with the whole situation with Mel, because obviously she's trying to track down Kat, but Catherine hasn't shown up. And then we end up finding out the reason why is because I guess news kind of spread that she started seeing stuff. And it seems like for Kat, she's kind of experienced that a good chunk of her life where she started seeing stuff and she wasn't really sure if it was real or not. And so it kind of seemed like maybe she was having a psychotic break. That's what it seemed like to her and her mother. And she's going to many different doctors and therapists about this before, but it seems like it's another flare up. But Mel tries to, sits down with her. It's like, let's just talk for a couple minutes. I'm going to tell you how it is. You're not crazy. Look, that person, this voice, that person, that's my mom. You talk to my mom. And so it's like you sending me the message you did wasn't just you being crazy, sending some crazy message. It meant something and it saved my life. I mean, which we know it literally did. And so the fact is that, explaining to her that you're not crazy, you're a medium. And I guess because I guess that kind of explains everything with the worms, because I think even though because I don't know, we might find out later on that there is still something going on, some connection between the Sentinel and that, but it seems like that might not have been even a Sentinel thing. It does seem like that was just purely, I guess, because she is a medium, she kind of tapped into that world, acting as that anchor. That was kind of like, well, because the way she made it seem like she continued to see them afterwards, so there still might be something there. I don't know. I mean, granted, she does now know that she's a medium, so she's not going to view it the same way, but I guess maybe going forward she'll kind of tap into her powers more and really kind of okay, this isn't in my head, I'm not crazy, these are my powers. So I'm curious to see what that ends up turning into. She, her and Mel kiss, but for Mel, it's like, I've literally been down this path before. She can't bring herself to be in a relationship because it's like, in this world, like, especially even if she's a medium, she's still very close to being human as a charmed one. It's like, especially where their life is right now, they're supposed to be dead. Then it's going to be a whole complicated thing of so many people potentially coming after them. And it's like everything she went through with Nico, literally erasing Nico from her life, making it so that their relationship never happened just for the sake of trying to protect her. That's a lot to kind of go through once in your lifetime. You don't want to have to go through that twice, having to deal with, being worried and scared that someone else might get dragged into the madness that is your life. So, but for Kat, she still wants to step away from everything because it's like, I know I'm not crazy. I know I have these medium powers, but the fact of the matter is I still need to take a break, basically figure herself out. And it's sad to hear that conversation, where Kat's basically like, to what could have been, between her and Mel. So, because even she was like, the fact is we found each other. She doesn't think it's a coincidence. There's got to be some like cosmic reason they were brought together. And it does seem like that might be the case, that one of the first people Mel meets when she comes here to, when they pop up in Seattle at the beginning of the season, like, lo and behold, who she meets? She meets Kat, who's connected to all this and kind of the witchy stuff, because she and herself, in fact, turns out to be a medium. And maybe that's going to be the role that Mel ends up. Maybe it's once that thing of like, someone's in your life, maybe for moments, for seasons, they're there to teach you a lesson and then move on. Maybe nothing's supposed to come about this. Maybe something later on will happen with the whole Mel and Catherine thing, or maybe nothing ever will. But Catherine leaves her the keys to the store and is like, oh, will you find someone to look after it? So either Mel's going to be looking after the store for a while because it kind of makes sense in the grand scheme of things, her being a witch and everything, having access to a lot of like materials and stuff like that, ingredients would be very helpful. Not unless it's going to be a thing like, if she takes over the store, then she inadvertently is going to meet other people at the witch, other witches, and help them come into their powers. Like, that could be the storyline they have, kind of Mel being the witchy big sister that, taking others, people under her wing and basically teaching them the ways of magic type of thing. Or maybe she's going to find that person who represents that for this store, potentially. Either way, maybe a combination of two. I think that's one potential route we could see with that. But I kind of chalked it up to just like her taking over the store. But, we'll see where things kind of go forward from here, in that regard. So there's another side of this episode, which is everything with Macy and Harry, who are still dealing with the whole complicated, oh yeah, Dark Lighter situation, because it's like, oh, do you feel bad knowing that? Do you really think that he's gone, or rather, do you feel bad that he's gone, or something like that? And Harry kind of turns it on her like, do you feel bad that he was gone? Because it's that complicated thing of because it comes up later on, because she's like, no matter what, Harry, he was a piece of you, and he was like, yeah, and that's all I am right now. Pieces, because for him it's that thing of like, because like there's that little flirtation between geez Abigail and Harry, and she's just kind of like, oh, if you ever want to get between me and the other Susans, you're always invited, which Macy was like, is there something there? She's like, no, you think I'd be so stupid? And he's like, she's like, nothing's wrong, and plus I know she's dangerous. And Macy's like, oh, nothing's wrong with a little dangerous. He's like, yeah, but when you're not thinking clearly. Once again, kind of bringing up, kind of showcasing what I kind of brought up last episode, where Macy's kind of like a little dangerous, fine, but as Harry is now kind of being the only piece of himself, yeah, it's good that he's 100% a good guy. Yeah, that's good, fine and dandy. But that side of himself, the side of him that part of yourself that's willing to kind of give into your desires every once in a while, kind of be a little bad. Like that aspect of him is gone, so he's not a complete person. So it's the hard situation of, like I said, he's not willing to take those leaps and chances, because I think there is a part of him that does feel inadequate when it comes to Macy, when it comes to his dark side, because it's like he can see that, like, oh, you have a thing for my dark side, like almost like you don't have a thing for me. It's like, yeah, we were once one person, that's sure, but the fact is you fell for him, and that part of him doesn't exist with me. I'm not anything that made him is no longer a part of me. It was all him. So it's a very, very complicated situation. And obviously they're looking into Jordan, because obviously for Maggie, she was trying to figure the whole thing out, because basically she took like a rag or whatever he had, wiped off some sweat, and they ran it, and basically there's some they used a spell to basically test and see whether he was something supernatural, but it turns out he's been cursed by a witch's dying breath. And it's like, okay, so what did he do that was so bad that a witch cursed him? But I also love the thing of like Macy and him kind of boxing, because it was the whole point to try to get the ring and everything. And he's like, oh, have you had any training? And she thinks back to everything she went through in season 1 and being like, yeah, a little bit, kind of being a few scrapes or whatever. So I thought that was kind of neat. But I also was kind of surprised with the whole Harry situation. I'm like, you were just standing there. Did you actually get the ring? But then we saw the ring in the back. I was like, right. The duplicate spell you were working on earlier. Right. So, but they end up running it, and they end up finding out that this obviously is a family heirloom, because it's like, how did he get a ring, something that's magical like that, if he's not magical? And obviously this curse and everything, but we find out that basically one of his ancestors was a witch finder, and so a witch that was going to be burned cursed his family 5 by 5, that basically before every male in his family turns 26, they die before they can, at the age of 25. And so now it turns out that Jordan's 25, and now they know, like, oh, he's been cursed. And so it's like, so what do you do in that circumstances? Do you try to break the spell? I mean, is there a way to break a curse like that? It's not like you necessarily warn him, which is interesting, because you can almost make the argument this is almost borderlining going down the path of everything with Gavin last season, because Gavin, obviously was protected by wasn't his grandmother, and obviously that led to the whole like Macy situation, and obviously it's meant to be like, oh, keep people and beings, supernatural beings away from him, to protect Gavin from evil. So it's obviously not the same thing at all, but there's a similarity in that regard of like, oh, because of the past, your presence is kind of screwed up a little bit. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting element to this. But not only that, another interesting element to this episode was the whole situation with Maggie finding out that Parker's back in the picture. But not only is he back in the picture, he's back in the picture because he's actually the demon overlord now, which I'm like, whoa, where did that go? But immediately my brain was like, he signed up for this job, because I felt like he ultimately find out he did sign up for it, but I immediately thought he did, because I was like, well, Maggie was the last ties to his humanity. Probably hearing that like Maggie was dead probably broke his heart, because remember, the only other humans that were important to him in his life were his mom, who died last season, and Maggie. And yeah, he was out doing soul searching and everything, but hearing that Maggie died probably broke his heart. And I thought like, oh, like he just gave up on everything and just decided to go full-blown demon. He had no reason to hold on to his humanity anymore. That's what I kind of thought, but turns out not to be the case. But we'll dive into that, because this all started because there were some dryads that were attacked, because there's that sacred grove where these fruits grow that basically make a person impervious to all forms of magic. So obviously you have Abigail pointing the finger towards Parker, because for her, like, this whole thing is about the fact is he took her throne. It's like, I literally paved the way and he's the one to take over the spot, because obviously she already had some issues with Parker because she thinks Parker's weak, but also at the same time it's like she was the one in the family that was kind of like the dark horse. Because even take the example of Parker, he is a bit of the dark horse, but once again, Alistair put all his hopes and dreams in that Parker for him to be the host body for the source. So even though Parker's half human, half demon, that whole thing was on purpose. Whereas, you know, in his mind, you know, Abigail is an abomination. Like, she doesn't serve her purpose. It's like, I don't need a witch / demon, you know. So there's that whole situation. But yeah, they go to investigate Parker, and you know, and it's interesting too, because I'm looking at Parker, I'm like, yo, what's up with the red eye thing? Like, you never did that last season. So I guess like by stepping into the position of Overlord, I guess that being in that position, I think even just taking the title of Overlord must make you stronger, because he wasn't like that at all last season. So I'm like, where did that crazy demonic power come from? I was like, that was pretty interesting. And obviously it took Maggie kind of trying to talk him down, because she was like, the fact is, just listen to me. And she kind of explained everything that happened. And so it's like, wait, Abigail tried to tell you I'm the one who burned down the grove? She's the one that tried to kill me multiple times before, which even Maggie was like, wait, you've tried to kill Parker? Which shouldn't be too much of a surprise, considering the fact is that she is the one who she has made it clear that she wants the throne and everything, because she believes it belongs to her. So I thought that's kind of interesting. I do like that this whole Overlord situation is just a title, because I thought it was legitimately an Overlord, but I guess it was, you know, Godric's attempt to kind of get all the demons, all the different demon groups to kind of like serve on the one person. It was just, he needed the idea of an Overlord so he could be the one in control. And that's the whole reason why he wants Parker there, because it's like, oh, Parker's weak and I can easily manipulate and control him, so that inadvertently I'm technically the Overlord, even though Parker's the face of the operation, but I'm the man behind the scenes kind of running things. I'm the one with all the real power. That's kind of what the whole, you know, point of what Godric was up to. But obviously that kind of blows up in his face a little bit, because Maggie being there, Maggie tugs at, you know, Parker's humanity. So it's not as easy to manipulate him, which, as, you know, Abigail says, because as long as Maggie's around, like, he's not going to listen to anyone else. You know, he's very soft-hearted, and especially when it comes to Maggie. So I thought it was, you know, at first it seems like, okay, they have some plot, but then it's like, oh, they took all the foods and they put the truth serum in him and everything, and it's like, oh. And I love Maggie asking Abigail, like, okay, what do you think of Harry? And she's like, oh, I think he's delightfully, you know, basically almost saying like, oh, he's almost like, oh, exhaustingly innocent, and I want to almost defile him. And, you know, and that was kind of, I was like, oh, I kind of had a feeling you had a thing for Harry. So, which makes you wonder, in the grand scheme of things, was there some part, well, we know Macy kind of had a thing for. It's actually interesting, because like, oh, the half demon, half witch, one likes dark lighter Harry, and the other demon / witch likes white lighter Harry. But I think it's because in her own mind it's like, well, he can be so easy. She wants to corrupt him. That was the word she used, that she wanted to corrupt him. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But then it turns out like she claims that she's the one behind killing the dryads and stealing all the fruit. The fact is that she's going to keep coming after Parker over and over again. And obviously it's like, oh, we got to execute her, which Maggie was like, you don't have to do this. There has to be another way. Because the fact of the matter is, it's like, despite what she's done, she's still your sister. And if you do that, you'll never, basically, you'll never forgive yourself. Because let's not forget, once again, she's the only family Parker's got left. And it's like, you might not like family. And yes, you two have a very screwed up family, a very, very screwed up family, but she's still your sister regardless. So instead of killing her, Parker steals her power, which I'm like, yo, look at you doing all this awesome stuff. I'm like, when the hell did you be able to do this? I like that though, like stealing away her demon side, which that still wouldn't have 100. Well, I guess like even if she kept her witch side, she wouldn't be able to do anything if she was locked up in a cell. But it's like, you're gonna live more. I wonder when he took her demon side, did that take away some of her magic? I would assume not. I mean, which would have been interesting because it'd be the reverse of Macy, who still has her demon side but lost her witch power. So it would have been interesting in that regard. Which I didn't talk about it, but it was interesting because the ring only worked for Maggie and not Macy, because Macy was like, yeah, my powers didn't work, but it's like, was it like a one shot? Because Maggie was the first one to kind of, touch it and absorb it. Some of them, like whatever magic was there was absorbed in Maggie every time she had a vision. So probably the last time she had a vision, she probably like sucked whatever energy or magic that was left in it out, or maybe restoring her powers was just kind of the one shot it had, and basically being near the ring kind of acted as a focus, and she kept draining it every time she subsequently used. I don't know what to make of it, but obviously like getting their powers back wouldn't be that easy for them. So, but that was pretty interesting, and Parker and Maggie kind of, rekindled the flame and everything. I'm like, oh, it's beautiful and sweet, but immediately my mind is like, oh, but I hope their story doesn't end as tragically as Cole and Phoebe's did from the original series. So that I just can't help but feel that from the back of my, like, that's in the back of my mind. I'm like, I try to get the feeling like when it's all said and done, I don't think Parker's going to live through the season. I think Maggie's going to lose him. I think it's going to be, the tragedy that is being the charmed ones, that just like things just don't work out for you, sadly. Every relationship, you have is a fight in its own regard, So obviously, Macy and Harry going through the complicated thing they're going through. Obviously, Maggie having this complicated relationship with Parker, and Mel kind of pushing anyone away because she doesn't, afraid to, which is interesting because you can make the argument that's kind of what Phoebe's story kind of was eventually. Like, she just got to the point she was kind of afraid to love. She didn't let her heart. So Mel might be kind of going down like Phoebe's storyline from the original series, like, later on down in the show's history. But regardless, I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but then finding out, like, oh, Godric, really, that whole, like, oh, Godric and Abigail working together was a thing. So it's like, he's the one that actually did all the killing. I guess that was on his own accord, but it's like, hey, I covered for you. And they think I don't have my powers and stuff like that. So she plans on taking down her brother to claim her throne. Godric's by her side with all this. Because for him, it's like he recognizes that if anyone's going to bring the demon worlds together, it's going to be Abigail. Which is interesting because, like, Parker's like, I don't want to, because obviously for Maggie, it's like, this world isn't my world, I have to leave. But it's like, he's like, what if, you and me, we were able to bridge that gap, a demon and a witch. So it's like, if we can do it, maybe we can, because for him, he wanted to bring peace and end all the bloodshed with all the demons. But now he's like, with us together, we could bridge that gap between demons and witches as well, which it was interesting considering the fact that your sister's also like a demon and a witch too. Like, but for her, she's all obsessed with the power. So I'm curious like what she will do at the end. Because we still haven't found out who it is, the master. Like, I kept thinking it was Abigail who might be the master to this, because once again, it's like they said her, but I'm kind of like, now that we see kind of how deceptive she can be, which to be fair, that was already kind of clear to the beginning, but it makes me think even more so now. My mindset is like, it has to be Abigail. Not unless it turns out to be someone else. And the fact that she's like getting all close to White Lighter Harry makes me think she's kind of doing that in contrast because she spent so much time having Dark Lighter Harry subservient to her. Maybe there's a part of her that kind of wants White Lighter Harry kind of to, it's like, oh, I already got your darker half under my control. I kind of want to corrupt your light half as well. Maybe, I don't know. But that was kind of an interesting thing to hear from Parker, especially when he proposes to Maggie and he's like, wait, what? I was like, Okay, so that's an interesting development. Obviously, she didn't answer immediately, but I'm sure this is something she's going to bring back to her sisters. Be like, oh, so should I take Parker up on this proposal? Because obviously I love him and care about him, but it's like, hey, if we do this, we can probably stop a lot of the demons going after witches, so that's something that has to be considered. Plus, she loves Parker too, but I'm sure is that the same thing of like, well, she's super young, and it's like, are you ready to kind of elope? Like, yeah, you might love Parker, but it's just like, not love, might. It's like, you definitely love Parker, but it's like, are you ready for marriage? That's a whole complicated thing, plus the burden of basically stopping the fighting between two species, the witches and the demons, that being kind of like a burden you'd have to be carrying too. That's a lot, so some very interesting things to kind of keep in mind going forward into the next episode, and I'm curious to see where all this ultimately ends up taking us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.